Well, hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Real Estate Investing. I'm your host, Sharon Vornholt, and I'm so happy you're here today. I got a listener question recently about how investors can work with executors during the probate process. How can you have a comfortable relationship with these folks at this difficult time in their life? This person also wanted to know whether the duties of the executor and those of an administrator are the same or different. And we'll talk about that because that's actually a really good question. So, if there's a will, the deceased would have appointed someone as the executor. They would have chosen the person to administer their will. In the absence of a will, the court will appoint an administrator to be in charge of the process. The duties and responsibilities of both of these people, the executor and the administrator, are exactly the same. It's how they came to be named that is different. And I'll go over all of that too. When investors don't understand the terminology and the process themselves, it can really be confusing for everyone involved. You don't necessarily make a good impression on these folks because they're often confused about the process as well. So when it comes to working with a personal representative, an investor shows up to look at the property. And when they know and understand the basic terminology, the process, how this whole thing works, it puts them in the perfect position to help these folks. They have confidence in your ability to help them solve this problem. And you can build a profitable business that includes probates at the same time as you are helping these folks. It doesn't matter if you focus solely on probates or if you just add this very profitable niche to your business. It's important for you to understand that these folks want our help and they need our help because they have to take care of the business of settling the estate. It's business. They need help with this legal problem that involves real estate, which is what we do. We are problem solvers in a niche that just helps, that happens to involve real estate. So if you're knowledgeable about probates, this puts you in a very unique position when you're compared to other investors. You are able to anticipate what comes next. You're able to help them move on with this process and move forward with their lives in a much easier fashion than the average investor that does not have this knowledge. This is probably the most important way that we help these people. And that is by being educated about being informed about the situation they are in so that we can help them through this process. So what exactly is probate? Simply put, it's the legal procedure that your estate goes through after you pass away, after anyone passes away. So it's a legal procedure, a legal process your estate goes through after you pass away. And during this legal proceeding, the court will open the estate. They will begin the process of distributing your estate and the property to your heirs through a specified path. So if there's a will is authenticated and the court will approve your name executor so that they can distribute the assets in the estate. This also includes property as well as other assets. So they'll either be distributed or sold according to the will. The debts will be paid and the heirs get what is left after all of this. So that's the broad overview of how this works. Now, estates are either called testate or intestate. They either have a will, which is testate, or they don't have a will, which is intestate. So when you have a situation that's intestate, the person dies without a will. And in this case, state laws determine who is entitled to the estate and who the court appoints as the personal representative. That's up to the court. So the personal representative would be the administrator in this case, and they'll manage the probate process. Now, when there's a will, that's called testate. If the deceased leaves a will, then this estate is testate, and the will states how the assets will be divided, and it also names an executor. The deceased has chosen the person that they trust to manage this whole process. Now, there's also a thing that comes into play sometimes. It's called a surety bond. It's called a little bit different. It has a little bit different names in different states. But this is a bond that protects the estate from someone who's in charge misusing or mishandling the funds in the estate. I actually know a case where this happened. A grandmother left her two granddaughters as co-executors of the will. One sister kind of left it up to the other sister, who in turn spent all of the money herself. So it's very hard for them to come back after the fact. I think the sister who was left out would have had to have pressed charges against her, and she wasn't willing to do that. But sometimes there's a bond in place just for that very reason. So the executor and the administrator are called the personal representative. And is there a difference between their duties and responsibilities? No, there really is not. By law, the person designated is to ensure that things are done in a legal way. If for the executor, they're there to see that things are carried out according to the deceased wishes. But the executors work from the estate from the time a person passes away until the probate is complete. Same thing with the personal representative, the administrator. Once they are appointed, they'll work from the beginning to the end. Now, if individual items have been left to beneficiaries, it is that person's responsibility to see that they receive them. And you might hear me refer to these people jointly as the decision maker. So the personal representative, that's the executor and or the administrator, they are the decision makers when it comes to selling the property in the estate. So it's important that you know who these people are, because you might not always be talking to that exact person. You might be talking to one of the heirs or a different relative. So what are some of the duties? Now, I want to say this up front, that if there's an attorney, a probate attorney, they will take care of a lot of these things. Sometimes it's a mix of the attorney does some and the personal representative does some things. That might be because it costs money to have an attorney. So it can be an attorney does it all. The family can get the paperwork and do it all. Or there can be a mix in there where the attorney files some of the paperwork and the personal representative does some. But some of the things they would have to do would be to initiate the whole probate process, either at the courthouse or with an attorney. They would need to notify the beneficiaries in the will that they are in the will, and that there will be this process handling with the estate. They would also notify banks, utility companies, insurance companies, and anyone else that had a business relationship with the deceased. Now, the creditors have to be notified. So I've talked about this many times. The creditors are anyone that the deceased owed money to. It could be a mortgage, a home equity line of credit on the property. It could be a car payment, credit cards. It could certainly be things like funeral expenses, hospital bills, and attorney fees. So whatever money is owed to someone from this from the deceased, must be paid before the heirs can get what they're getting. So the creditors will be notified about the death of this person, and they have an opportunity to say, this person owes me X number of dollars. Now, there's a process called notice to creditors, which is in place in most states. I know for a fact New York does not have this. I don't know about every state, but in most states, there's a process for doing this. So the executors or a representative must also take inventory of the assets. If anything needs to be appraised, like jewelry, boats, Corvettes, whatever that might be. So those things would need to be appraised, and the assets and bank accounts would need to be accounted for. And then there are taxes. So federal and state taxes will be due for the deceased, and also estate taxes. There's a separate tax form that will be filed for the estate. So someone has to do all of these things. My advice is to use a probate attorney whenever possible, because it just goes so much smoother and so much easier. Now, like I said, the attorney can do these notifications if you have a notification. So this is just an overview of how the process works. It's an overview of how you can show up, and so that you are the obvious choice for these folks you're working with. You show up as a knowledgeable person. You know how to have conversations with them. You understand that while this is a difficult time for them, it is a business thing that they have to do. It's a legal process they have to complete. So once you understand these things, you have a thorough understanding of how to show up for these people, of how to work with them, and how to help them move forward. And I will tell you this, in spite of the circumstances, they are so glad to have our help. They really and truly are. So if you want to learn more, I have a lot of information on the blog and on the podcast. So you can check out the Louisville Gals Real Estate blog.com or the Let's Talk Real Estate Investing podcast. There is just a ton of free information there. It's really easy to work in this niche once you have some basic knowledge. You can also get my free probate investing starter kit, and you can get that at probateinvestingsimplified.com/starter kit. Now, if you want to take it one step further and you want to become a bona fide probate investing expert, you can do that in just 6 short weeks with my course, Probate Investing Simplified. So check it out, and you can do that at probateinvestingsimplified.com. If you have questions, just shoot me an email at Sharon@SharonVornholt.com. So Sharon@SharonVornholt.com. And I want to thank you for coming out week after week and listening to the show. I really do appreciate it. I would also appreciate it if you would leave us a rating and a review on iTunes. I will see you same time, same place next week. Bye for now.